How's it going, everyone? Larry here from the Farmstead Way, enjoying a really freaking hot evening here out on the homestead. So I just got home from work. It's been a long, crazy week. Lots going on around here. One of the things that happened this week is we had the funeral and buried my wife's grandfather, so my father-in-law's dad. And that one just brings me to the topic of this video of legacy. Now, you're probably thinking, as a younger guy, what do I know about legacy? You know, normally legacy is something you think about at the end of your life. But where does legacy begin? It begins as soon as you have people looking up to you. It begins as soon as you take on the responsibility of being a father and being a husband. So many young people don't think about that. Legacy is normally a thing that comes later in life, and people think of the overall story of their life. And I think we need to start thinking about legacy as young men, because what we do now affects the way people see us, because someday reputation turns into legacy. What you've done turns into what people know you for. So we're going to talk a little about that today. So what do I have in my pipe today? Well, speaking of legacy, I'm actually smoking his Peterson 999 St. Patrick's Day pipe. And in here I've got some Peterson of Dublin Flake Virginia pipe tobacco, and this is a really tasty blend. I've only had one bowl of it so far, and I can say it's really nice. I've had other Virginias. Like, my favorite tobacco is the Peterson Sherlock Holmes, which is a mixture of Virginias. I've had some red Virginia, and it burns a little hot and a little sweet, and it's kind of unenjoyable. But this this brown Virginia is really tasty, so we're gonna fire it up. There's something so nice about being outside, it not being freezing, because it seems like here in Ohio, you're freezing most of the year, enjoying good bowl of tobacco. And the leftover coffee from work. So, legacy. When you think of people that have been, especially family members, because you know about their overall overarching life of their story of their life, dyslexic moment. When you know about their overall life, you can see how their actions affect people. And you can see how their actions throughout their entire life affect generation after generation. That's why grandpas are extremely important, because they normally are a marker of the heading of the entire family. And you can either be a man that sets your family up for success generation after generation, or you can be a man that sets your family up for failure, and you'll have a legacy of failure. And that's why I'm saying it's so important as young men for us to keep our legacy in mind, because what we do now affects how people are going to view us when we're gone. Because how we raise our children right now, even though they're tiny, is going to send ripples through generation after generation. I've seen it in my family, that mistakes that were made back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s are still affecting my family, and I'm doing my very best to correct them in this generation. My family has a long history of divorce, of, I'm just going to say it, unrighteousness and ungodliness, a long history of partying, drugs and alcohol, abandonment. And a lot of that started several generations in front of me, and it continued not with me. I refuse to let my family go down that road, and I refuse to let my legacy be that of my forefathers. And you have to think of your reputation, not from a pride standpoint of people see how good you are, but from a standpoint of how bad you are not. I know we all make mistakes and stuff, but how we own up to those mistakes and learn from them is extremely important. Because the decisions that we make when you're a husband and father don't just affect you, they affect everybody. Your little drinking habit, that affects everybody. Your little anger habit affects everybody. Your little promiscuity habits, that affects everybody. And it will go down the generational line until someone gets sick and tired of it and puts a stop to it. And that could be you. That could be you. I mean, just think in your family, is there something that your dad did, your grandfather did, that absolutely disgusts you, that you refuse to pass on to your children because you don't want your family legacy to just be this generational sin that never gets addressed? And that's something I think about every day when I do the dumb things that I do. You know, I have to daily put down the flesh and think, what kind of man do I want to be for my son? What kind of man do I want to be for my daughter? Because for my daughter, I need to be the man that I want her to marry, and for my son, I need him to be a better man than I am, so we can keep this pattern going. And you also think of legacy beyond just actions. You know, there's physical legacy of the things around you, the skills that you know, the things that you pass down from generation to generation. What are you going to leave for your kids? You know, I'm kind of a poor boy, but this homestead that we live on with me and my in-laws, it's the start of a legacy that started with my wife's great-grandfather. My wife's great-grandfather worked extremely hard, became a millionaire, farming and doing stuff way back in the day after World War II. He left an inheritance, and we were able to get this property. And it was before I met my wife. And we have turned this place from an old cattle pasture that had weeds and all kinds of stuff growing up to a place where my family can grow up. Because the legacy I want to leave is this beautiful homestead. This is only a part of it, and you've seen it in several videos. With the world getting crazier and crazier, I do not want my children to have to start life worrying about where they're going to live, a safe place to be, being away from family. You know, that's the point of a homestead. I don't have the bougie garden. I don't have the several head of cattle in the bottom field. I'd like to have that stuff, but what do I do have? We have a home base, a place to put down roots, a place where we can build other houses and have our own community, so that way my kids, when they grow up, they don't have to have them and their spouse working freaking 80 hours a week just so they can make $150,000 so they can barely afford a house. So you can see it through there, and I don't know if you've seen it in a few other videos. I turned a pole barn into a house. It was literally a garage that had trucks, rats, random chicken nests everywhere, and just garbage. And I emptied it out with my family, and we turned it into a home that I can raise my family in. Legacy, a legacy of hard work, good work ethic, teaching the next generation that by the sweat of your brow you can accomplish so much. And it's not just the daily grind and feeling that sense of accomplishment inside of you. I just think of my wife's grandfather and all the fun times that we had, and the legacy of faith that he had in God to get him through things, and just hearing at his eulogy all the people he helped lead to Christ. And if you don't believe, well, what are you doing morally for the next generation? Sounds tough, but this generation, especially mine, all they're concerned about is the next dopamine hit, the next girlfriend, the next sexual escapade, the next party, the next jacked up truck they can afford, the next vacation, the next Instagram post. I'm more worried about being the best man I can be for my father. Being the best man I can be as a father for my son. And to my grandchildren, eventually. You know, that's why I always say, you know, a legacy of health and fitness is important, because I want to be in my 60s, 70s, and 80s and not be crippled in a wheelchair. I want to be healthy enough to watch my kids grow up and my grandkids grow up. And so I can teach my grandkids about work ethic and not just how, you know, go to grandpa's house and see him crippled in a wheelchair. Which stuff does happen. Injuries occur. And that can't be controlled, but what you can control is your mindset, how you deal with it. Legacy is extremely important, and it's something I think about all the time. Because, like I said, in my family history, there's just so much that I'm putting an end to with this homestead, with my kids, my wife. My kids will never know divorce. They will never know abuse. They will never know mindless idleness. They will never be dull. I'm not going to allow it. Are they going to make mistakes? Absolutely. I hope they do. That's how you learn. Hopefully they're not ungodly, immoral mistakes, because that's my job to prevent. Because if you teach them right, they'll avoid that stuff. Now there's going to be dumb stuff that they do. And that's just how it is when you're young. But like I've said before, as soon as you get one of these fun little metal bands around your finger and you got a woman that's running around with your last name, that legacy timer starts. Even if you're not married, if you have no intentions of getting married, how are people going to remember you by? What are you going to leave behind? Are you going to leave behind when you're dead and old a whole house full of junk that's worthless to nobody, with no, with no one's love in their heart for you? Or are people going to look back and be like, you know, if it hadn't been for Grandpa, Dad wouldn't have been where he's at. And if Dad wasn't where he's at, I wouldn't be who I am. And I hope that I can carry on this tradition, this legacy that is worth honoring. So if you're even a young man, you got to start thinking about that now, because it starts now. That hourglass has been tilted. And if you keep that in mind, it'll keep you on the straight and narrow. Anyway, like I said, some quick thoughts after work. I'm going to go and push mow this section of yard that the zero turn can't handle because it's super hilly and I don't feel like unbending more lawnmower blades. So thank you all for sticking around, liking and subscribing, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.